Hello, we hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another esports news episode. And first off, I do need to thank you guys. We have officially broken 1,000 subscribers on the channel. So thank you guys who have all watched our daily content. And as always, if you guys are new here, we do post esports news content, hopefully more content in the future. But as of right now, esports news episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But as always, guys, let's get into it. And there's not too much CSGO news out there, but I do promise you guys by Friday's episode, we should have a lot more CSGO news out there right now. But for now, we actually do have IEM Shanghai going on this past weekend. And of course, I do have to showcase for all of you the best jerseys we've seen in a long time in CSGO, especially at IEM Shanghai this week. That, of course, is Team Greyhounds on screen. You guys also know one of their members, though, formerly known as Dick Stacy, but for the remainder of the event, due to censorship, he'll be known as Stacy. Now, going forward, IEM is showing us that censorship, of course, given the fact there are younger viewers out there, he must now remain as Stacy and no longer Dick Stacy. Going forward, if other organizers will pick this up is the big question, and you guys can debate in the comment section down below if that should be a thing, although I probably do agree with it. There are a lot of younger viewers who do watch CSGO, so Dick Stacy is now Stacy going forward. And again, like I said, not too much news out there, but I promise you Friday's episode comes around, we'll have a lot more drama in the CSGO scene that we can talk about on the show. But as of right now, we do have big news for Tempo Storm's new roster, who supposedly will be happy and not going to be his former teammate alongside him, that being RPK. Apparently it will be Zywoo. Of course, the upcoming French superstar has been playing with the team for the past week and a half. Although no signatures have been taking place yet, no official signing yet, Tempo Storm has been playing with Zywoo and Happy alongside him. And initially when this team did break up, it was actually, I think it was LoL and Chetty who actually left this roster, and they picked up Happy and RPK for a few tournaments and a few qualifiers. It does seem that RPK is now off that team for the time being, and Zywoo will actually replace him on that spot. So again, no signing sometime soon. Zywoo did tell us, though, he should expect to sign probably sometime in September, and it could be with Tempo Storm. So that's it for today's CSGO news, but we should have a lot more come Friday. And finally, we've been waiting for a week and a half on the show. I know a lot of you guys don't even play Dota 2, and I've been hyping it up way too much. We finally have the Immortal Treasure 3 released with some, of course, there has to be controversy around Valve, whatever they do as of late. And this is actually in big controversy, as we did have, of course, the treasure was finally released. We did want it as well, due to some mediocre responses out there. I think overall, it was generally a rework of old characters. People wanted to see unique designs. It was kind of just an addition or an add-on to previous designs they have done. It was still pretty cool. There were some cool works out there. And again, kind of a mixture of responses. You guys can leave a comment down below if you guys are avid Dota 2 players, but again, I think the general response so far is about average, if not subpar to what they could have done for this Immortal Treasure 3. But also in bigger controversy out there is, of course, the drop rates of this Immortal Treasure. We had the same thing happen last year around TI-17 time for Immortal Treasure 2, where supposedly the rates and the drop rates of 3 of these items, the rare, the very rare, and the ultra rare, were supposedly bugged. Now, Valve never made an official response to this, but actually about a few weeks after TI-17, the bug or the fixed rates were eventually fixed, but no public statement was ever made. And it seems so far, based on response, people are having very tough times. Those items, rare, very rare, and ultra rare, living up to their names, because it seems like almost no one can actually open them. And of course, it's probably the best time to have this bug if you just release the case itself, as most people are going to open this Immortal Treasure 3 within the first week of it. So I really hope this time around Valve actually takes either to Reddit or any post out there to actually clarify what this bug was. But on top of that, guys, also on screen for you, we do finally have our TI-18 announcement for our casting list, as well as our overall talent list has finally been announced. They wait for this long. It's kind of surprising as well. They wait within 2 weeks of the event to actually announce it, but some great talent on there, of course, and I cannot wait to see the event itself. We are now 2 weeks away, guys, and also for Friday's episode, we will track, of course, the TI-18 prize pool, as we're probably going to see a small surge today and throughout the next week or so because of Immortal Treasure 3. But about Immortal Treasure 3, I really hope Valve responds in some way. And we do officially have a new patch update that's going to be 5.1 for Fortnite. Now, for all of you guys who thought the same thing I did, it was actually announced in their official dev post on the Fortnite YouTube channel that we were not going to see the rocket-guided missile until 5.2, but it's come a bit early, and with a few, I guess you could say, bugs. As of right now, it doesn't seem to be too OP. I'd love to see what you guys think about this, with massive damage reductions as well as fuse reductions and travel speed reductions. It still says it does a lot of reduced damage to players as well as structures, and it just to go to show you guys that structure damage reduction from 1100 800 to 400. Just goes to show you how much the old guided missile was OP, but this one is still seemingly a bit broken to me. It still comes out of nowhere and does result in a lot of kills, but at the very least though, I want to know you guys' opinions about this. Is it still OP? Should it stay in the game? And I'm sure Epic will respond to whatever the community does say about the guided missile being back, but nonetheless, as you guys have seen, at least the very least we get out of this rocket guided missile is some amazing clips out there. Now also, when this patch was officially released the day of, actually yesterday, within the first few hours, a lot of things were not fixed. Slurp juice was one of them. I can guarantee you guys and confirm as of last night as well, a few hours after the patch did release, it was officially fixed. So now if your shield is full, the slurp juice will heal you instead. So it should be fixed. Patch 5.1 so far was kind of a smaller patch than we've been actually used to in the past, but it should be good to go. The only question is the guided missile still OP? And also in huge League of Legends news out there, of course, I'm going to go over the patch notes in a bit. That's going to be the back half of the segment, though, because patch notes these days, you're killing me, Riot. They take so long to overview, so many character changes, and again, before I actually get into that, so many slight nerfs and slight buffs, and depending on your playstyle, we're not really sure which direction these updates do go. It seems to be a mixture of mostly just balances, although Fizz seems to be very OP. We'll get into that in a second, though. The first thing I do want to cover, though, is, of course, as of right now, we do apparently have League of Legends or Riot making a brand new experiment first in North America, and that's going to be lifting permanent bans. Now, most of these bans so far that have been lifted are actually due to toxicity and reports of that nature. So a lot of people out there complaining about North America being the first actual country to have their perma bans lifted. As of right now, I can confirm to you guys from Riot Wookie as well as other sources, it's going to be an experiment from North America, kind of a smaller population base, I guess, dependent upon where you're going to locate next. They could have gone to a smaller European section, but again, the Chinese region, of course, way big compared to North America. So they're going to try it out here first. So for all of you guys who are a bit angry about that, if you have a permabanned account, it's an experiment right now to see if these actual toxicity bans can be reverted and if it does work out. And if players, mainly the big question was, if players are actually permabanned for toxicity, can they come back and actually change their attitude? That's the big question mark. But now let's break into patch notes, guys. Tons of champions changed this week. Let's break down patch 8.15. And first off, we do have Fiddlesticks, kind of a slight nerf to his laning phase as well as his poke. Now with his E mana cost has been increased, so just a slight increase there. Probably not going to be a huge change to Fiddlesticks. On top of that, though, the biggest changes, though, were with Fizz. Fizz saw considerably the largest buffs we've seen for this patch so far of anyone, with his actual damage increases for both his W as well as his ult, and also increases to the AP ratios. That does mean Fizz will get stronger as he levels. That's going to be crazy to see how hard his W now does hit, but especially if that R does land, you can't flash out of it, you can't Zonias with it. It's going to be very cool to see how much damage it truly does do, especially when he's level 18. And Irelia also got a little bit of a balance as her base attack and health saw minor increases. Her passive now gains more damage per stack, but then again, all of her abilities also saw slight nerfs. So again, kind of a balancing act here. They've been trying to fix Irelia for the last two patches and seem to be doing a weird job of doing it. Her W's damage reduction no longer scales, but also now stays at 50%. Now with Kindred, he also just saw straight up nerfs as Wolf's attack speed kind of fell actually pretty drastically here, from 50% bonus attack speed for Wolf to just 25%, and now his Lamb's Respite, his ult cooldown, has been considerably increased and also scales as well. So considerable nerfs there for Kindred, but Lee Sin was probably what we saw is the most interesting of all the changes so far, with his Q base damage reduced, but bonus attack damage slightly increased. Now most importantly as well, the big change coming in is actually his execute damage now deals up to 100% increased damage based off the enemy's missing health instead of just 8%. So this means ADCs and mages have to watch out in the backline for Lee Sin, while tanks are probably a lot safer. Last patch before this was reverted was actually vice versa. He did a lot more damage to tanks. Obviously they had a lot more missing health than of course ADCs and mages, and now it's switched up again. So ADCs and mages watch out for the new Lee Sin. And also considerable nerfs for Morgana, as Morgana's mana regen has been considerably nerfed from 15 per 5 seconds to just 11 per 5 seconds. And also with that, her black shield now costs 30 more mana. So look to be a pretty big nerf, especially in early to mid game for Morgana. We're going to see how this really affects her future play rate. And then some very short updates for Olaf and Quinn. First off, it was Olaf's W attack speed, and now saw considerable increases of 15%. Also, it does scale 15% as well. On top of that, Quinn's base armor was reduced, and this was certainly needed. Her base armor was kind of ridiculous, but also her passive barrier base damage was just slightly reduced and will likely have very little impact mid to late game. Like I said, her base armor was already way too high, and again, that passive Harrier base damage only reduced by 5. Very, very subtle impacts here by Riot. Probably not going to have a big effect anywhere from the mid to late game. Also, Syndra saw some base damage, was heavily buffed early to mid game, and should be maybe seeing her play rate increase, as well as on top of that, guys, her Q base damage already pretty heavy, and this actually was buffed a considerable amount. And also very lastly for Thresh, we saw some late game buffs to his W's cooldown and early game buffs to his E's max damage, so we'll see how that affects his gameplay. And speaking of supports out there, guys, a very important combination for supports, the Ancient Coin, Relic, and Spell Thief. That actual cost there has been increased by 50 gold, so expect supports when they come to lane early game to bring one less health pot with them, so that could see a substantial change, especially for early game supports. And overall, the biggest changes, you guys could probably tell, we did sum it up, a lot of crit items out there, pretty much in general, besides maybe the Essence Reaver. They did pretty much reduce all the prices for ADC and crit champion builds, and alongside that, they can now build them faster. So a lot of the items out there, they saw a decrease in gold, but on top of that, they saw reduces in attack damage. Pretty much all of them besides the Essence Reaver had a small reduction in attack damage, pretty much making so ADCs and crit champions can now build their full builds early on in game. So early to mid to, I guess you could say, early or late game, they're now going to be pretty much buffed, but on top of that though, they're going to max out a lot faster. So very cool to see how this affects people out there like Double Lift. Will Reckless come back? That's a big question mark. I still highly doubt it, but again, it's going to be very cool to see how these changes do affect ADC and crit champions out there. Will they be substantial enough is the big question. Now very lastly as well, we saw transformation now reverted back to the 10-minute timer, so 10 minutes into a game before you can actually use stopwatch and things like that. I think it was mainly in Korean gameplay. We saw a lot of pro players really taking advantage of that and taking stopwatch without actually building off of it. So again, transformation, apparently overplayed, has now been reduced back to 10 minutes can be the first time to use it instead of 8 minutes. So that's going to be it for League of Legends changes. Are we going to continue to see all these changes? I think this time around though, people are probably going to be pretty happy with them, besides one thing, that being Fizz. I'm very curious to see what clips we see this week with this going live. And with, of course, the last season ending for Overwatch League Finals, guys, an amazing season, and we have a decent amount of time until next season does start, but apparently big announcements from IGN. I'll link their article down below, is apparently we're going to be seeing 6 new organizations enter the Overwatch League next season, so it'll be very cool to see as well. On top of this following rumors as well, apparently a new North American team has already been finalized out of Atlanta, Georgia, so again, it's going to be obviously cool to see for me, other North American fans out there, a new team here for the Overwatch League. But on top of that, this does actually come following news. ESPN will continue to cover Overwatch League, but also other broadcasters there are going to actually join in, and Disney Channel will be one of them. I'm not really sure how many of you guys are actually North American viewers, but of course Disney Channel here is a very big outlet, very big broadcast. It'd be very cool to see actually how they do that, because I think they have generally a pretty lower aged audience. It's going to be cool to see how they actually promote things like the Overwatch League. So that's it for the Overwatch League news. Hopefully more coming Friday, but again, a huge announcement as Overwatch League does plan to expand next season. And very lastly, for today's episode of Esports News, I do want to actually touch on all the Rocket League changes out there. I tried to memorize them as best as possible, but I do apologize, guys. The roster lock for RLCS was actually last night, so we had a ton of teams actually changing their rosters, adding subs, finalizing their teams as well. I'm going to try and name off a bunch of them, guys, but let's go full screen for this one. And first off, we actually do have Cloud9 solidifying their signing of course, the Muffin Men, led by Squishy Muffins on that roster. They have now signed their new team as well, and on top of that, Sad Jr. will be their sub. We also had Mouse Sports announced Monday, guys. Alex, Skyline, and Tigray will be their new roster. On top of that, we also have Ghost Gaming completed their roster with Go Rocks Go as their 4th member, and Rocket League's #1 returning team heading into Season 6, of course, that will be Team Dignitas, guys. They will actually sign Jzar as their substitute player. So a lot of teams so far throughout the roster lock confirmation had to confirm substitutes, but a few changes out there to other teams as well. One of them being Rogue Gaming, who also announced their new crew, and it will be Matt returning to the roster as their substitute player. Now, Fnatic signed a brand new roster as well. They've actually locked in Mummy, Snasky, and Maestro. Envious also picked up a couple new guys. One of the few teams to actually change some of their roster. That will be Remco Stain, iGnite joining, as well as Met Sonaris. And very lastly, guys, we still have, I guess, no big changes anymore, but still a ton of European players out there did go unsigned. So very curious to see as well how this trade lock really does affect pickups in the future. I'm not really sure on the correct terminology as well going forward, but a ton of European players did go unsigned after the roster lock, which means they may not be able to compete in Season 6 of RLCS, which is kind of a big thing as well, because like I've said multiple episodes ago, it went from 250K prize pool to this year $1 million prize pool. It's gonna be very cool to see how that actually affects how these teams play out, and as you can imagine, it was already competitive before. We should see teams rise to their absolute best this season. And very lastly as well, of course, the Zephyr Crate was released in Rocket League, so I can showcase to all of you guys the new items on screen, but most importantly as well, the new Cyclone battle card did drop, so a huge update for Rocket League so far, and it's gonna be so cool to see this next season how it does play out. So hope you guys all enjoyed today's episode of Esports News. If you guys did, leave a comment down below. How did we do? What did we miss? What can we do better in the future? We hope you guys all enjoy, and we will see you all back here Friday, what should be a very dramatic and very packed episode. So hope you guys all enjoy, and as always, I'll see you then.